What about that for an opener of a show? What about that? Marty McAuley joins us now. And what about that? The Maiden's Lighthouse. Have you ever been out to the Maiden's Lighthouse, Marty?
I've never been, Justin, but I can see them more or less from where I'm at. You know, it's not too far away. They look nice.
It's a pretty special place, I must admit. I'd love to go there. I wasn't there. Tim Cully was there, and he very kindly gave us that for a show opener tonight. I would imagine there's a few 100,000 bottles of whiskey have been racked on now with those rocks. They don't call them the Hoolan Rocks for nothing.
No, I remember coming up one time, and I was leading a tour, and there was lots of guys from India there, and it was slightly misty, and the outline of them kind of looks a bit like a submarine. So they were convinced that it was a submarine, and I didn't want to tell them anything different, you know. So I just said it was, and they were from Lossiemouth in Scotland.
Sometimes you must never spoil the illusion. Of course, the Germans famously mistook them for a submarine in the First World War. I used to thought that was an old wives' tale, but it's absolutely true, as you know yourself. Now, we've got an action-packed show lined up this week. Dozens of people watching already. I don't know what we're doing right. All we're doing is talking whiskey.
Maybe it's my healthy red glow. I've got a touch of sunburn.
Have you? That's why I've got the lights on full here so you can't see. Did you fall asleep in the back garden after having a few, did you?
No. It's just the sun was so strong today. I was out and about doing socially distanced exercise, precaution. But I was about, and it was so warm. And then I was sitting out looking for this rocket, which I never saw. Yeah, too far asleep, apparently.
Well, tell me this and tell me no more. What are we doing this week on the show?
We're going to do whiskey styles. Now, this is not whiskey regions. You know, it's not Scotch and Irish and that kind of thing. It's different styles of whiskey that all fall within the definition of what whiskey is. Okay, so we'll go. What is a single malt? Because some people get very confused between single malt and single cask and what's a blend and this kind of thing. So we'll just talk through the different styles, not pretty much all of them as such, you know.
Okay, and what are the styles? Single malt, is that the same as a one pot, is it?
No. Right, we'll start and we'll do single malt. So I've lifted out really the only really well established so far single malt that makes malt whiskey, and that's Bushmills. So this is the Bushmills 10-year-old single malt. Now, so what is a single malt? Single malt means it has to be made with 100% malted barley from one distillery. Okay, so that's all that means. Now, it says 10 years old. So this is the age statement, okay? Which means the youngest whiskey in this is 10 years old. What they do is they take barrels of different aged whiskies and they blend from that one distillery to produce this bottle. So there could be 20-year-old whiskey in here, but they're not allowed to say that. They have to say the youngest whiskey. So this is a 10-year-old single malt. So
why would they do that? Why would they put older whiskey in, Marty, and not be allowed to say?
Because what they could do is flip it round and put a teaspoon of 21-year-old whiskey in and claim that it's 21-year-old whiskey when the majority of it is maybe only 10 years old. So it has to be the youngest whiskey. But in order to get the flavour and taste that they want, they will put older whiskies in. Now you have to remember that whiskey's not a standardised product. It's got so many variables that the flavour profiles, etc., really are quite different. So in order for a blender to get the flavour they want, they might have to put in 15, 20-year-old whiskey. The chances of them putting 20-year-olds probably fairly slim, but it's just, I'm using that as an example. So they will use older whiskies, but they have to, by law, state the youngest whiskey that's there. So 10-year-old could have much older whiskey in it. So this is Bushmills, sort of entry-level single malt. And it's okay. It's okay.
What do you hear what some people are saying already tonight? Somebody's saying, is that the black bush you're holding up? I don't think it was. Was it there? No?
No, this is the 10-year-old single malt.
10-year-old single malt. Yes, yes. John Conley was asking that there. And somebody was saying there, I mean, this is what Charlene Blackburn's saying. This is what she's saying. Amazing, guys. Tonight is a perfect night for a single malt Bushmills.
You're quite correct, Charlene. Well done.
Why is that? Because it's a hot night.
Just any night, essentially, is a good night. Charlene, I know, likes a little vino. I know Charlene, and Charlene likes a little vino. And I'm glad that she's now elevating herself and moving on to proper whiskey. You know.
Hold on. We've got a comedian on tonight. John Connolly says, it's my fault. Sorry, the screen is too small. Now listen, the sport's starting next week. Tell the wife you've got to get a new TV and get a TV this size, and then we'll be bigger than normal, right? Yeah. You know the way when you see things bigger than normal on the TV, it scares you? Yeah. A bit like my bake. Well, am I close or further away? I'll sit further away, and then I'll get smaller, and Marty will get bigger. Should we do that?
No. My big red feet.
I'll make Marty bigger. I'll make Marty bigger, John. Here we go. I'll make him bigger. There he's bigger, and I'm smaller. I'm like a leprechaun. Just put your hand up and pet my head there. I'm just below your left hand. There, down a bit more. There you go. Now, John. Thanks for that. Yes, the screen can be a bit small and the definition can go, but at least it's not as bad as the girls that are on before us and everyone's in the mirror image and they're like playing with their left hands. But listen, you can rewind this when it's over, but we're talking styles of whiskey tonight. Marty's just gone through the single malt. Welcome along to Dane O'Leary and Sherman Wright as well. He's saying, this is what Sherman's saying, listening in tonight and looking forward to hearing some great insights. He doesn't know what we're going to say, Marty.
No, well, I will try and be as insightful as possible for everyone's benefit. So, We've covered single malt. As I say, single malt. Lots of guys would consider single malt the sort of the premier whiskey, and in some ways, yes, okay, but it's not necessarily. In some ways, it's kind of a little bit disrespectful to all the other styles of whiskey because they all have different elements, and single malts are seen as being the premier, but blended whiskies make up for 90% of sales. So blended whiskies are actually much, much more popular, really because they are an awful lot cheaper. Okay, but we'll get back. This is a blend, but we'll get back to blended whiskies in a little minute. Okay. Next one I want to go to. We will go to pot still whiskey. Okay. This is Method and Madness. Pot still. Pot still whiskey is unique to Ireland. It has to be made in Ireland. And it comes from the late 1800s. There was a malt tax introduced. And from that, the distillers started to make a mash bill. Now, what I mean by mash bill is if you have a mash bill of 100% malted barley. All you're using is malted barley. If you want to add in other grains, and remember, whiskey has to be made from grains, okay? It has to be made from a cereal. So if you want to change the mash bill, you want to put in unmalted barley. They've brought in a tax on malt. So in order to reduce cost, the distillers made up a mash bill of malted and unmalted barley to bring the price down. And what they found was it created a different style of whiskey. It created a whiskey that had a little bit different flavour and a slightly peppery finish to it, and it was kind of unique. So they experimented around with lots of different grains. So they used oats, they would have used wheat, rye, corn, etc., etc. So they would have used different ones. These days, Irish whiskey, pot still Irish whiskey, is a PGI product. It's a protected geographical indication, and it has to come from Ireland, and it has to meet the technical file now. So the mash bill has to be a minimum of 30% malted barley, a minimum of 30% unmalted barley, and you can have up to 5% other cereals. So you can have a few percent rye or something in there as well. So it gives an awful lot different mash bills, different outcomes, different recipes, and so on and so forth. This is Method and Madness, and this is a very interesting one actually, because it's from Middleton. It's from the Irish distillers. So these are kind of the experimental range, and this is finished in French chestnut, not your traditional oak. So it started off. It's matured in sherry and bourbon casks, and then finished off in French chestnut, which is real sort of break from tradition, and it's really quite interesting. It's really quite good. It has a different signature taste to it, very familiar but different at the same time. So I would recommend, if you haven't tried this, hunt down a bottle of it and give it a whirl, because it is something different,
Now, some of the comments coming in, Marty, here are very highly complimentary. Alistair Minnis is saying, evening, gents. Evening to you, Alistair. Remember, we're watching in the UK and Ireland. It's 13 minutes past 10 British summer time, and that time in Portugal as well. But of course, if you're watching in America, it's far earlier on in the day. And if you're watching in continental Europe, well, it's far later at night, but you're just about to go out the door. If you were allowed out, of course. Dean Martin is saying, Marty, seriously, how do you know all this stuff? They don't realise there's a big production crew feeding you all this in front of you, and they can't see it. Isn't that right?
All my prep work, my huge amount of prep work, which was essentially, I was sitting out about 20 minutes ago, sitting out the front, hoping to see a space rocket. This just sounded bizarre. Sitting out the front, trying to see a space rocket, and then I come running in here to get this set up, this sort of set up. I enjoy a drink, and I like. I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm a whiskey nerd, so that's why I know all this stuff.
All right, and you'll be pleased to know that John Connolly is now watching on the big screen. He's happy now. He can see the bottles. So we'll say evening to you, John. I love your hat, John. You can't see it unless you're watching on the laptop there. But John has got a very summery hat on. And he says he's watching from this place. Linlithgow. Where's Linlithgow?
Wheels, is it? No?
I don't know, but I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna Google it so as we know where Linlithgow is.
Don't spoil the magic, Justin. Just get it and say, "Oh, I knew all along."
All right. I knew all along. All right. Philip Orr is saying brilliant as well tonight. So we're talking this evening. We're talking styles of whiskey. We've done. It's near Edinburgh. There we go. You should know that, Marty. It must be south of Edinburgh, and it's the place that nobody ever goes. Oh no, sorry, Sherman, right? He must be an American. Is he an American? And he knows where it is. He says it's just a mile from Stirling. So it gets overshadowed, does it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. We'll know for next week. We'll Google it before we say. So we've done the two main styles here. We've done the single malt, and we've done the one pot.
Pot still. The pot still whiskies you will hear an awful lot more about. I've said this not last week, the week before. You'll see an awful lot more pot still as there's more of an appreciation for it. Lots of people in Ireland don't even know about it. They don't know that this is basically our champagne. This is where Irish whiskey will be going, and there'll be a much bigger demand for this in the States. especially within the next few years. So get yourself familiarised with it. Hunt down a few bottles. People they're kind of used to it, but they don't actually realise that they're drinking it in some ways. The likes of some of the Powers 3 Swallows would be pot still. You have Grain Spot and stuff. These are pot still whiskies. So you'll hear more of them. There'll be an awful lot more brands of it coming online very shortly. Okay. So the next one, I'm going to just do this. This is a single cask whiskey. Now, this is not a style, but I want to point out that people get very confused between single cask and single malt. People think single malt whiskey is basically a single cask, and it's not. Single cask whiskies, and this is this is really good. Writer's Tears, okay? Cognac finished, single cask, okay?
Wow.
What has happened with this is they have basically cask number 6430, and they have lifted it out of the cask and bottled it straight away. Picked a cask that they think is of the highest quality, essentially, and they put it in. Now, normally when people make single cask whiskies, this is them showing off as good as they can get, okay? So you'll try and get your best stuff, if you like. This is your shop front stuff. This will always be, because it's single cask, very limited. So there's only 576 bottles of this. That's bottled at 46%. This I can't remember the price of this. It was like £85 or something. As you can tell, I quite like this. But lots of the distilleries now are bringing out single cask offerings, and it really is, as I say, it's their sort of blue ribbon or the showpiece events. But single cask is not single malt. Okay, so I know people sometimes get confused by that. So I hope that clears that up. I hope it sort of, you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we're getting questions in already tonight. They're coming thick and fast tonight, Marty. I'm going to try and keep up with them as I go along tonight, because otherwise we end up with too many at the end.
No problem.
And Julie Mason has said here, she has said, we'll have to see if any single pot still is available in the States. Curious here, is it not across the pond yet?
It should be. You should probably be able to get some of the better known brands. It might take a little bit of looking. You would need to probably look in some of the specialist liquor stores over in the US. If you look for probably the Spot series, the Green Spot, Yellow Spot, Red Spot, the Powers 3 Swallows, for example, these are pot still whiskies. You will see an awful lot more of them. As it becomes that sort of Irish brand, you'll start to see an awful lot more pot still whiskey being pushed and made available. Just currently at the minute, there just isn't the volume of it. There isn't enough pot still whiskey in Ireland really to supply huge demand over in the likes of the States. It's just not there. So you'll see an awful lot more of it, but it should be available at some of the liquor stores. You just have to look out for it.
Okay, now I've seen a theme here tonight, and it's frightening me a wee bit. And this theme is this, Marty, because I happen to notice that everything tonight is called single, right? So you have single malt, single pot still, right, and single cask. What's that all about? Is this to do with the fact that we're all going to be single forever now because of the coronavirus? Is that it?
Well, single pot still. It used to be called pure pot still, okay? But the Food and Drug Administration in the US didn't like this because pure pot still implied that other whiskies weren't pure. So they said you can't use the word pure. So essentially what they did was they thought, well, we need to come up with another word. So they said single pot still whiskey. And that's how that came. It was basically by association that's how that came about. So it's a bit like why they had to change the spelling of Iron Brew, because it's not brewed, and the Food and Drug Administration in the US said, well, if it's not brewed, you can't call it Iron Brew. So they then spelled it with BRU instead of BREW. So it's basically it was to do with sort of economic factors. That's why. But you can understand single cask. Obviously, it's from a single cask, and single malt means it's basically from a single distillery. So that's why that connection came about. Okay.
It's always when you hear the true story behind things, you're always amazed by it, aren't you?
You are a bit, yes. Things are a bit strange at times, Yeah, but that's how that came about. It's not any real. It's a deliberate thing, but it's kind of was forced on them. If you know what I mean.
Okay, now let me guess. The fourth thing on the agenda tonight is not going to be called single. It's going to be called double. Is it? Make mine a double? No.
No, it's still single. This is a fairly sort of new push, if you like, and this is single grain. This is Glendalough single grain whiskey. Okay.
Okay.
Now, grain whiskey is it's often seen as being the sort of lesser brother of malted whiskey. You'll have seen the little pot stills, the sort of the wee pot stills, the wee fat belly, and the wee line arm and stuff over the top of them. You know the one I mean. That sort of very decorative, ornamental shaped still. That is a pot still. Now, when you make whiskey in a pot still, you have to get your beer, if you like, your wort in, boil it up in batches. Okay, so it has to be boiled up in batches. Now, a very clever man who was a tax inspector called Aeneas Coffey, way back at the start, not the very start, but the start of the 19th century, invented a thing called the continuous still, a Coffey still. And what you'll see is it's a column. It basically can work 24/7. Okay? Now, when you distill from a wee fat pot still and it pops out, it comes out about 72% alcohol, okay, ABV. In a column still, you can supply it all the time, and it goes in layers and comes out the top, but it comes out at much higher percentage. It comes out about 92.5% ABV. But it's much, much less flavoursome. It doesn't have the same amount of flavour that a pot still has, but it's much cheaper. Okay, it's because you can continually use it. It comes out much cheaper. Okay. Now, single grains mean it can be whiskey distilled by. It can have corn, wheat, rye, any of these sort of mash bills. But a lot of the time they will use different cereals, but your end product doesn't have huge amount of flavour because it's mainly all just ethanol. Now it gets watered down, and where you're relying on the flavour coming from is really the cask. The cask has to be really top notch, if I'm honest. So it has to be. This is finished in bourbon Oloroso sherry. I have to check these things because I keep getting slightly confused as to what one is. So this is Glendalough. You can see St. Kevin there with his wee bird. The story of St. Kevin's actually really quite funny because he was a total misogynist. He was a he was a horrible man.
He had a kitchen, didn't he?
he was so devout that the birds just to come and land on him. That's the point.
All right.
Now Glendalough, if you've ever been to Glendalough, beautiful place, and it's basically like a religious city. It's fabulous, but it's based around St. Kevin. Glendalough did a series of adverts a few years ago. You can get them on YouTube, and it's all about St. Kevin, and it's like a massive stage production. It's really quite fun to watch. You should maybe link it at the end of this. But this is a single grain whiskey. As I say, what they try to do with this is reliant on the cask finishes to try and get the cask to impart, because the actual spirit itself doesn't carry a huge amount of character. So this you'll probably not see this pushed anywhere near the same as pot still, but it gives a different flavour. It has a lighter taste to it. And as I say, it's very much reliant on the casks. So it's not as complex in many ways, but still a different style, different thing to try, different thing to familiarise yourself with. Again, if you're a whiskey purist, if you're somebody who wants to try all the different things, you have to try single grain whiskey. As I say, it's kind of a new kid on the block, and a lot of people won't be familiar with it. But it's another way for distilleries to put out a different product. You can get reasonably good cask finished whiskies at a reasonable price. And that's essentially what I see single grain as being about,
And we're getting comments in from all over the world at the minute, Marty. Nick Ryan says the texture is also different on the single grain. How does that come about? Surely, if the process was continuous, you'd think it would be even smoother.
I don't like the word smooth, Justin. If I'm totally honest, smooth to me implies, or people when you use the word smooth, it implies something's rough. If it's not smooth, do you understand? It's to do with mouthfeel. Grain whiskies tend to be an awful lot lighter in mouthfeel. They don't have an awful lot of that oily, sort of phenol-y type stuff where you get, sometimes you put a whiskey in your mouth and it's got that very sort of viscous, thick taste and it coats your mouth. You won't get that with grain whiskies because when it comes off the still, it's so full of alcohol that they have to water it down anyway, but it just doesn't have that oily texture to it. It's in some ways, grain whiskies, you'll read this, and some it's partially true. Grain whiskey was the death knell of Irish whiskies back in the day. The reason being, lots of the Irish distilleries didn't actually think it was whiskey. They thought it wasn't actually proper spirit because it didn't have that oily, lovely, deep, rich, complex flavour. They thought it was cheating, essentially. The Scottish industry, however, had no qualms about it, and they adopted it quite quickly. Now, some of the Irish distilleries did adopt column still whiskey, Dunville's being the big one, and they actually, when they closed in the 1930s, they were one of the Irish distilleries that were actually still making a lot of money. And one of the revenue streams that they had was they were selling grain whiskey to the Scottish distilleries for them to make up blended whiskey, which we'll get to forthwith. But
right, listen, people have already actioned things tonight. This is fantastic. Let me see. We're being told where exactly where Linlithgow is. It was the birthplace of Mary, Queen of Scots. There you go.
Right.
So you're bound to have been there, Marty.
I've went past it many times. I just never noticed. Shall we say? It's pretty remiss of me.
John,
there's a castle in Linlithgow, is there? Linlithgow Castle? Does that sound right?
There's definitely one in Stirling. I've been in Stirling Castle on tour, but John Connolly is saying that he thanks you for the suggestion, and he's just bought from Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. His first experience of Irish grain. There you go. What do you think of that? I tell you, we should have an Amazon endorsement channel on this. We'd be making 12p already.
Well, all I will say is, I do buy stuff from Amazon, obviously, whiskey from Amazon as well, but do go for the local guys as well. There's plenty of online local guys, Irish malts, Wine Peg, Sipsters. There's plenty of local guys selling stuff, and Certainly at this time, they need as much help as possible.
Well, a lot of them actually probably are the suppliers via Amazon. Now, John is saying that his first experience was green ore, 8-year-old. Not as an 8-year-old, I might say, because you have to be over 21 to watch this channel in the United States of America, because I've clicked not for children, you babies. All right?
Yeah.
Now, other people have got in touch tonight and said other things. It's coming on Monday, but Alistair Minnis was asking, what is a good level, entry level pot still? What's a good entry level on that?
You would have to say Redbreast 12. Redbreast 12 is fabulous whiskey. It's a pot still whiskey. It's one of the premium ones. You can get it readily available in all the big supermarkets if you want to go that way. I think the last time I saw it, it was about £40 a bottle, Redbreast 12. And really fabulous quality. You can take your time over it, sip over it. You can play about with it a little bit. You can put a tiny little bit of water, no more than a teaspoon. Play with it. It's very approachable, very drinkable. You would like it. But like this, it's one of those ones that pretty much everybody as a default setting is going to like Redbreast 12. It's a superb quality whiskey. That would be one of the big. If you want to try something a little different, I would suggest trying Grain Scotch. And if you want a really, really good quality whiskey, pot still whiskey for not a huge amount of money, certainly in terms of whiskey can go for thousands of pounds a bottle. If you want to go for something, push it out, try Redbreast 21. It's fabulous stuff. It's amazing. It's about £140 a bottle. But special occasion whiskey. This is not a drink half a bottle a night stuff, No.
We wish if we won the lottery, I'm sure we'd be toasting it with something like that there.
Well, we could indeed. So yeah, Green Scotch or Redbreast 21 as something different, or if you want to push the boat out. But Redbreast 12, fabulous just to try.
So, if people want to get in touch with you during the week, the best way to go about it is through Ushkey Tours on Twitter, and you can get us on Irish Whiskey Review on the Tinternet, on Facebook. It's ulsterwhiskey.com. Simple as that. Now, we've run through single malt tonight. We've given some great suggestions there. We've run through single pot still in the past sort of 40 minutes already have gone, Marty. Time flies when you have fun. We're like 40 minutes in tonight, Marty. That's unbelievable. Yeah. You've got to go in 5 minutes, have you? No?
I've got five more whiskey styles to tell.
You've got 5 more whiskey styles to go. We've done single cast. We've done single grain. I tell you what, folks, that's it for the recaps tonight. What you'll have to do is you'll have to rewind the thing when we get to the end of it, because I like it to be under an hour, because when I share it on other platforms, it can only be an hour long. That's why. All right.
Well, I'm just catching a look at myself here. I look embarrassed. I'm actually going that red.
We've done 4 and you've got 5 more to go. Let's hit us with the next one. What is it?
The next one I'm going to do is blend it one. I touched on it earlier. So this is JJ Corey blend it. This is the Gale. Okay. Now blended whiskies are basically a mix of anything. You can have a grain whiskey, add it into a single malt or a malt whiskey, into a malt whiskey, make up your grain. Now it can come from multiple distilleries, it can come from multiple mash bills, all that kind of stuff. So it's a blended whiskey. So, for example, Bushmills Original, JJ Corey, they're very much seen as being the entry level. And in some ways, this isn't justified that it's not a purist whiskey. People get very shirty about this, and they get very uptight. It's not a single malt. It's not a single. Blended whiskies give blenders much more scope. You can go to multiple distilleries, pick up really, really good casks of whiskey, and blend them up to make what you think is the best whiskey you can put in a glass. You could have malted whiskey, malt whiskey from multiple distilleries, blend it up to make it what you think is the signature, the best whiskey you can produce. But it still has to be called a blend. Purists kind of get a bit shirty about it and they think, blend, it's an inferior product, but that doesn't really do it justice. A blender has much more scope. He's not limited by one signature style. So he can come up with Johnny Walker, for example. There's lots of high-end blends, lots of blends that can be extremely expensive. And what you're getting, the quality of what you're getting can be reflected in the price. The reason you have the bad reputation in some ways of blended whiskies is they'll take the really flavoursome malt whiskey from the little pot stills, put in grain whiskey and make a much cheaper product. But in some ways it doesn't necessarily do it justice. Blended whiskies are 90% plus of the market. These are the most popular whiskies you can buy. So if you went to a supermarket, you've White and Mackay and Bells and Teachers and all of these. These are all blends. Obviously they're Scottish blends, but the fact that people will buy entry level, if you like, whiskies, that's where the bulk is. It's really, really an art. It's something that in some ways is it's viewed upon a blend of whiskies is not as good as a single malt. I would tend to disagree. I think if you have a blender who's on his game, this brand JJ Corey, they are bringing out some really nice stuff. This is quite good. This is quite good stuff. So don't write off blended whiskey because you think it's the cheap stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Right. Now, Nick Ryan's saying he's agreeing with you. He's saying blending is really an art. Its key is consistency and its complexity. I mean, how do they manage to get it the same twice in a row?
Well, this is it. I mean, if you consider what a blender's job is you take all of these variable products. No barrel of whiskey is the same. I mean, it's just not. They're very similar, but because you're using natural products and aged over time, it's going to always taste slightly different. So a blender's art, and the blend, I always see a distiller as being the scientist behind the thing. He's the guy who does the distilling and all the sciencey bit. It has to be cut at the right time and all that. The blender's really the artist of the thing. They have to have in their head all what I want this end product to be. So I have to keep where am I sourcing my product to get it to what I need to be. I take my hat off to them because I think it's what they do is fabulous. I mean, it's a tough job, really tough job.
Right. So that wraps it up for about blended. What's next tonight?
Blended now. We're going overseas. Okay, we're going to go to bourbon. Okay, now this is a bourbon. This is a small batch bourbon. Bourbon is an American whiskey, obviously, but it doesn't have to be made. It can be made anywhere in the US. It just has to follow certain production methods. Okay, now it has to be. It's made with corn, and the reason is when lots of the settlers who actually left from Ireland, they went across to the US. Couldn't really grow barley where they were, so they grew corn and they made corn whiskey, corn liquor, or whatever it is they want to call it over there. Now it has to be 51% corn mash bill, and then you can make it up with other stuff as well. And it has to be aged in a charred oak cask, a new charred oak cask. What I mean by that is they burn the inside of the cask, and the charcoal acts really as a charcoal filter, and it takes away some of the unpleasant stuff that you get in whiskey. So some of the less desirable congeners, the flavour compounds, if you like. How they discovered the charring? In fact, it's reckoned that what happened was casks made from oak were reused for various purposes. So if you were putting herring, for example, into a cask, into a wooden barrel, you were shipping them about. Well, no one wanted whiskey that tasted like fish. So what they did was they just burnt the inside of it. They burnt the inside of it to take away that thing, and then they put whiskey in and discovered that it gave it purified it, and it gave it a real different flavour and texture. So bourbon can be made all over. Jim Beam, etc., etc. These are bourbon. I'm not a huge bourbon fan, if I'm honest. It's a little too sweet for me. It tends to have that sort of sickly sweet flavour. Certainly at the level. If you go for something that's a bit higher in ABV, for example, Wild Turkey 101, the alcohol level's quite high, and that cuts through that sort of sickly sweet thing that I'm not overly keen on. This, however, is quite good. That's 1792. This isn't just sweet. It's still sweet, but it's not sickly sweet.
I wonder what the viewers think. Nick, John, Trevor, Alistair, are you a fan of bourbon? Probably, if anybody in England's watching, they probably think it's a biscuit they dunk in their tea.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of bourbons. If I'm totally honest, the higher end stuff's not so bad because it doesn't have that sort of saccharine sweetness, you know.
So after bourbon, where are we going to go now?
Well, we're going to stay in the US. Now, lots of people think Jack Daniel's is a bourbon, but it's not. It states quite clearly on the bottle that it's not a bourbon, that it's a Tennessee whiskey. And there is a difference, okay? I thought I had a bottle of Jack Daniel's in my...
But you drunk it?
Well, I possibly did, but somebody else probably has pilfered it on me, much more likely. Now, Tennessee whiskies do a different production method. Jack Daniel's, for example, uses the sour mash method. And what that means is when they ferment their liquor before it gets distilled, the previous day's fermented wort stuff, they lift some of that out and put it into today's batch. So the previous day they bring it over, and that's really to aid the fermentation, to make your wort, to make your beer before you go and get it distilled. So they do that. Then they use a filtration method where they put it through a bed of charcoal, and it gets dripped through a bed of charcoal about 10 feet deep, charred maple, to basically, if you like, start the fermentation or the aging process as it goes through. Okay, and so as it goes through that, then that adds in flavour, takes away the bad flavours, if you like. Probably a better way of putting it. So that's a Tennessee whiskey, and so Jack Daniel's is not a bourbon. Okay, there is another one. George Dickel is another Tennessee whiskey. That's a very much a specific whiskey to the States, and it would recognise.
This isn't your bottle of Jack Daniel's, is it, Marty?
What?
Is that your bottle of Jack Daniel's?
No.
All right.
No, I don't have. I seem to have drunk all the Jack Daniel's, or else someone else has.
Maybe this is it in my house. Is it? No.
It could very well be, or it could be the Exorcist has took it.
he maybe has. He maybe has. No. So listen, you live and learn every day. Now this is what some people are saying. Okay. Alistair Minnis says he loves the occasional wild turkey with loads of ice. Yeah. And of course, Trevor Watson saying the same. Wild Turkey is a yes with me. John Connolly is saying he likes Jack's single barrel. Yeah. Julie Mason is saying, she's agreeing with you. She's saying Tennessee whiskey, bourbon, not so much. There you go.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. What I would say is Wild Turkey, made by the Rippey family in Tyrone, Kentucky. Basically because their original family basically came from this part of the world, and that's why they went over there. So Wild Turkey has a good connection with Ulster, so ulsterwhiskey.com. See,
there we go. We've got a big long one in here. I'm not sure I can fit it all. I can fit it all on the screen tonight. For some reason, it's working. Nick Ryan says it's an interesting that I'm in the southern states with dry environment, which results in the AVB increase in the cask. You can find bourbon and Tennessee whiskey quite dry due to the virgin wood extraction. So there you go. Get a bit of insight there.
Yeah, this is a key thing. Lots of Irish whiskies and Scotch whiskies, you'll see that it's aged in ex-bourbon barrels. Bourbon has to be aged in virgin oak. The barrels can only be used once. So you imagine the amount that the likes of Jim Beam are going to be going through. The casks, you can only use them once. So what they do is they sell them on, and it can be. In some way, there's lots of people that very, shall we say, high and mighty about the fact that Irish and Scotch whiskies aged for longer than American whiskies. Some American whiskies only have to be aged in a cask for 1 year, but you have to remember a couple of years in a much warmer environment means that it's actually getting more and more into the wood, and that the charring effect actually has more of an effect on it anyway. So it would age quicker in that environment than it would, say, in the Highlands of Scotland, for example. So, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So where we're heading next, we've still quite a few to run through tonight, don't we?
Well, we have another two. We're going to head a little bit north, and we're going to go to Canada. So, Crown Royal. Canada has a very good whiskey tradition. Lots of what they would do, they typically use blends an awful lot more, and they tend to have a lot of them they'll use rye and stuff in it as well, so it's a bit more peppery. It's always quite light, but a Canadian style whiskey. One thing about Canadian whiskies that make it slightly different from the rest so far, is that they can add flavorings. Okay, by law they can add 9.09% flavoring, so long as it's another aged spirit. So you could have a Canadian whiskey that is cut in with Jameson or cognac or anything else. So by definition, lots of these wouldn't necessarily be classified as. You couldn't have a Scotch whisky, for example, that has Scotch whisky written on it and had Bushmills in it. That just wouldn't be allowed. That would be breaking the Trade Description Act. But in Canada, you can have almost 10% of a flavouring from basically anywhere. So
you could basically have Canadian with maple syrup then?
It has to be an aged spirit. So it would have to be. It could be. You could put in rum, if you like. You could put in. You could put in an aged rum.
Is that like not a ready-made cocktail then, Marty?
It kind of is. I mean, for lots of people who would be purists, it wouldn't be. People would find that really, really, really strange. But that's what they're allowed to do. Now, Canadian whiskies tend to be very light, and they tend to take. I find that they take certain like ice and stuff probably slightly better than some of the other ones. They're okay. They're okay, but they wouldn't necessarily appeal to whiskey nerds, Canadian whiskies, you know.
Okay, and we've one final one to go through tonight. In the final 5 minutes of the show, anybody would think we'll rehearse this multiple times beforehand.
Yeah, but our preparation tends to be right, we're ready to go. Now, I'll just briefly touch on Japanese whiskey. I was asked about this the other day. Japanese whiskey tends to be very good. However, things are changing in Japanese whiskey circles. Japanese whiskey doesn't really have any definitions. So it's kind of like the Wild West out there at the minute. For example, Nika, another Japanese whiskey brand, own the Ben Nevis Distillery. And what they do is they take Scotch, they make Scotch whiskey, ship it over to Japan, put it into their bottles, and call it Japanese whiskey. Now, they're allowed to do this because it's basically not really regulated as much as any of the other whiskey regions. And lots of people are beginning to go, this is not great. This is not a good practice. So Japanese whiskey does tend to be very good quality, and I'm not taking that away from it. This is Suntory Toki. This is an awful lot cheaper than it used to be, or Suntory. And people are beginning to get a little bit, you don't really know what you're getting. You're not really getting the craft. You're not really getting what you would consider to be a premium thing from Scotland, for example, or Ireland. So I just put Japanese in there just to let people know that things in Japan are sort of changing, and you can see a decline in quality and in respect, if you like, as well. So that's this all of the whiskey styles, if you like, wrapped up as much as I can.
Is that down to money? Is that accountants running things in Japan? Is that, Marty?
Well, the thing about it is lots of people thought Japanese whiskey really, really good, so they wanted it. They thought it was really good, but it was quite expensive. So they wanted to meet the demand and try and get a little bit of the supply. So since there's not really as heavily regulated as certainly a Scotch or Irish whiskey would be, that's really where they've ended up now. So there you go.
All right. Well, that's been a fascinating insight to whiskey styles this week again. I've been Justin McCartney. He's been Marty McAuley. Thank you, everyone, for running with us tonight. We've got about 3 minutes left, Marty. You're going to have a wee drop of the Japanese stuff, are you? Yeah.
I'm going to go to the land of the rising sun here. I've got plenty of sun today, so I might as well finish it off in the style to which I've become accustomed. I've got my Corona cut. I got the Corona cut during the week, basically buzz cut. Like, since there's no hairdressers open, so it's the one style everybody can go for.
I'm exactly the same. So we had single malt tonight. We had. I want you to give me your favorite one when we run down them. Single malt.
My favorite single malt.
Yeah.
Currently at the minute, probably. You've put me in the spot now. My favorite single malt at the minute, probably the Dunville's cask strength.
Okay, your favorite single pot still.
My favorite pot still whiskey would probably be Redbreast 12 cask strength. Is exceptionally good. You put me on the spot. It's kind of hard. It's like asking who's your favorite child. You know.
I know. You should never have one. Your favorite single cask.
I'll go with the Dunville's single cask strength. Yeah, it's fabulous. Okay,
your favorite single grain.
Probably one of the Teeling single grain. That's okay. McAuley, yeah.
Your favorite blended?
Middleton, very rare.
And do we have another? Your favorite bourbon?
Probably that 1792 small batch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your favorite Tennessee?
I'll just go. Jack Daniels is hard to beat. I mean, it's a fabulous product, and it's one of those ones. You don't drink Jack Daniels really straight. You probably drink it with a Coke or something. But it serves a purpose. It's good, and there's nothing wrong with it.
And your favorite Canadian?
Crown Royal. If I'm totally honest, I don't know enough about Canadian whiskies because it's just not the whole.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily appeal to me in a huge way, you know.
And your favorite Japanese then?
Off the top of my head, I can't think. I tried a Yamazaki a while ago. I'm trying to think what age it was. I think it was an 18, and it's fabulous stuff. There's lots of good Japanese whiskies. Nika from the Barrel's a really good one too. And I know I was saying about it, them being from the Ben Nevis Distillery, but it doesn't take away from the fact that taste-wise it's very good taste. But in terms of an experience, it's not necessarily what you would want from a whiskey experience, if you know what I mean.
My favourite would be that girl from Lost in Translation. She would be my favourite.
Yeah. Well, yes. We've crossed the line there, Justin. We've crossed the line.
We've crossed the line. It's after 10 o'clock. Anyway, we're all right. We're going to wrap up now. A couple of last-minute questions coming in. We're getting the great evening. Thank you very much from Trevor. We're getting in from Nick Ryan. The Japanese are not as cooperative of the Scottish and Irish distilleries, so they have to produce lots of variations or source from elsewhere.
Yeah, this is very true. They are. I think they've got to a point where they've kind of tied themselves up a little bit in knots. They're not selling to each other. I don't know. It seems to me, from the outside looking, and it seems a bit of a mess, the Japanese. But again, it's one of those things that they have. They're sourcing it from other stuff, you know.
Okay, again, Judy Mason saying, cheers, Marty. You have such a wealth of whiskey knowledge and love the history you share, all in a brilliant manner. Can't wait for the next show. It'll be, 7 days away next Saturday night, unless we win the lottery between then and now.
Or I actually turned into a strip of bacon or something.
Well, it's supposed to be good all this week. I walked 10 miles today. John Conley is saying, a fantastic gents. First giant I've joined, ulsterwhiskey.com. Thanks for joining us, John. Remember to comment, like, and share. Tell all your friends. We'll put the notification up during the week. We've no idea what next week's going to be about yet. Nick Ryan is saying, very great tasting. Really enjoyed it. Okay.
Enjoy.
Frank is saying, Frank Hearn is another great show tonight. Many thanks, guys. And we've got two more questions here. John Conley says he's getting his money's worth tonight. John Conley, what is your desert island whiskey?
One served by your wee Japanese woman from
very good. Good answer. And final question tonight is Alistair goes to Alistair Minnis. Thoughts on English Welsh distilleries?
Now, there's English distilleries. There's a few of them cropping up now. If you go into Marks and Spencers, for example, they sell St. George's whiskey. Yeah. What's the saying? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
I tell you what. Shall we leave it there, Marty? Shall we? And we'll
Penderyn. I stayed recently in Brown's Hotel in Larne, which is the hometown of the wonderful Dylan Thomas, and it's owned by the same guy who produces Penderyn whiskey. And I got a chance to taste a number of the range. It's quite good. Probably needs a bit more age to it, but Penderyn, yeah, spot on. English stuff. Moving on.
Listen, we've got the decanter for you. I wanted to ask you this. I don't know whether you can see it on screen or not. Can you see that decanter? Can you?
Yes.
Do you like that decanter?
It's not subtle, Justin, is how I would put that. You know, it's
Should you decant your whiskey? That's what we're going to leave it with. Should you decant it?
You should always have it in a decent glass and sip over it, not go too mad with it. Decent quality whiskey should not be drank very quick. I normally have a tin of Guinness, if I'm totally honest, or a beer, and let the whiskey just do its thing in the glass, and it will totally change flavour in a little period. And so yes, you do, but you do it in the glass. Don't decant it into big decanters. It's quite all right when it is a little bit.
All right. Thanks very much, guys, for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for sharing. And we'll see you next week. I'll speak to you before then. Any ideas what we're going to do next week, Marty?
No. In a word, no.
I tell you what, that was a fascinating insight this week. You know, we've been in double figures viewers. You know, there was 2,000-3,000 people watched it last week and the week before. Long may it continue. Enjoy. Bottoms up.
Take care.
Good night.
Be safe.